In all of my years of creating, there is one thing that I really do regret. And that regret is allowing fear, especially the fear of failure, to really control and even manipulate how I approach my art. So, for those of you who may be new here, one thing that I really like to do is honestly paint inside of my comfort zone. And to be perfectly honest, pretty much everyone likes to do this. And it's simply because you know what to expect. So my comfort zone is typically painting animals or objects such as flowers and those types of things. I feel very comfortable painting these because I usually know exactly how they're going to go and rarely have any major catastrophes. That being said, when I stay in my comfort zone, I am actually limiting myself in my art journey, as well as hindering my artistic expression. So that is why this year specifically, I've really been challenging myself to get out of my comfort zone. Because personally, I would rather deal with the frustration of failure than looking back and really regretting that I never tried or even attempted something new or even uncomfortable, especially when it comes to my artistic journey. And that is why this year I really decided to challenge myself to paint with things or paint subjects that honestly I really hate painting. And it's not really because I particularly hate these things. I actually love a lot of these supplies and I really like how other artists use them, or even how other artists will paint these particular subjects that I'm going to be talking about today. But for me, these particular supplies as well as techniques and subject matters are very challenging for me and can be very frustrating as well as test my patience. So what are the things that I really hate to paint? Well, one thing that I actually really hate painting with, and this actually might surprise you, is watercolor concentrates. Specifically the Hydrus line. I actually really like the Radiant line simply because they're a lot more transparent and airy or light, but they are not light fast. The Hydrus line, however, is light fast, but they also have a thicker consistency. And I honestly really struggle sometimes with getting the right water to paint ratio with these. And that is one reason why sometimes I really hate painting with them. Because honestly, I just am not as familiar with them as I should be. Another thing that I really hate doing is masking large areas of a painting. Often I will mask smaller areas with masking fluid or basically liquid frisket. And the reason is because smaller areas are a lot easier to control. So when you're masking larger areas, it's actually really easy to put way too much masking fluid over an area or too little masking fluid, and you really have to pay attention and gauge that perfect amount that will adhere to your paper without ripping it, but then at the same time completely cover your paper and not allow little pigments of paint to seep through. So that is another reason why I decided to use masking fluid over an extremely large area. And one reason why I really needed to use this particular amount of masking fluid is because I also wanted to challenge myself to do a painting study with more intense colors, basically showing more of a light or a harsher light source in this particular painting. So basically what would happen is, since I decided to use more intense colors, I'm going to have harsher shadows as well as more dramatic, lighter areas. which is another thing that I really struggle with. And to be perfectly honest, I absolutely love artists who use this particular technique, especially with digital paintings. I feel like they do a really good job of creating a bright light source that allows really harsh and sharp shadows. And honestly, I would love to incorporate that into my own art style with watercolor, which is why I really need to tackle this particular skill and really study light as well as shadows. And finally, the last thing that I really hate painting is people. I really struggle with painting people. And to be honest, I've actually really struggled with drawing people. I have actually gotten a lot better because over the past 3 years, I have been doing very intensive drawing studies of basically anatomy as well as proportions and just drawing people in general. So I've really been pushing myself, and I am very, very proud of myself in how far I have come with that particular skill. And I'm actually really liking how my drawings are coming out. However, I still really struggle with painting people, which is why in this particular illustration, I am painting a girl. And I really wanted to challenge myself to work on shading, especially with her hands, which honestly aren't the best, but they are really good compared to where I have been in the past with shading and working with just proportions. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this particular painting turned out. However, this is honestly my third attempt at painting this particular illustration. So the first 2 attempts were definitely failures, but I would rather deal with the frustration of failure than regret not tackling this project at all. So what did I fail in the last 2 paintings? Well, the first thing that I failed at was basically I misjudged my paint to water ratio with my watercolor concentrates, and they just ended up far too dark and too intense, making it very difficult to actually see the details of the background with the leaves and the wolf. They kind of just merged together. The next issue that I had was with the masking fluid. So after correcting my mistake with the watercolor concentrates and getting a really nice intensity, but yet still having that depth, especially between the leaves as the background and the wolf, after getting all of that correct and fixing that problem, I then started to remove the masking fluid, and I had placed the masking fluid too thickly or too thick of a layer on the paper, and as a result, it ripped the paper as I was removing it. So that was kind of chalked up failure number 2. So for the third attempt, which is what you're seeing, I finally really fixed those problems and really learned along the way. So technically the last 2 weren't really failures in my opinion, as long as I was learning through the experience. So what did I learn? Well, the first thing that I learned is that when applying masking fluid, you really need to use, especially over a larger area, you need to use a larger brush, and you really need to make sure that you're applying as thin of a layer of masking fluid on your paper as you possibly can make without any of the bumps of the paper underneath kind of popping through and allowing paint pigment to come on top. Another thing that I learned was it is actually better to work with watercolor concentrates in more of a pouring method. I actually used more of a pouring method with this particular, at least with the background, and it allowed me to gauge better how intense I wanted the color. So that is another thing that I learned during my journey with painting this illustration. And finally, I learned a lot about mixing pigment shade for skin color. I was a little bit unsure about how to do specifically shadows with certain skin colors. I have a lot more to do and a lot more studying to do with this particular skill, but I feel like it did turn out really well at the end of the illustration. That being said, we typically are our own worst critic, and I definitely can look at this painting and say, wow, Carrie, you did fantastic, but there's still a lot more to do, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to dwell on necessarily the negative, but rather just learn from it and really get a gauge of what I need to work on next. So instead of seeing it as, oh, these are mistakes, I need to really focus on how can I get better at working on those particular problems that are still showing up in this painting. So yeah, that is it for this particular video. I really hope you enjoyed this, of me kind of just sharing with you my experience of painting with things that I really don't like to paint with or really don't like to paint, and being very transparent with all of y'all. I do want to say that I'm going to be taking a break from YouTube the 4th week of March. So typically I upload the 2nd and 4th Saturday of a month. I'm going to be taking a break from this particular month because I am planning on, in April, starting a brand new series on this channel, and I think y'all are going to really like it. I've had actually a lot of people emailing me specifically asking me to do this particular series, and it's basically an old series that I honestly never really finished on my channel, and so I'm thinking about taking that back up again and basically finishing that particular series. So anyway, that is something for you to look forward to. I've already started really working on that. So lots of love, y'all, and happy painting, and I will see you in April.